My name is Alicia Kranjc, and I am the product manager for the community product here at Figma. Who knows what the Figma community product is? Yeah? Who has used a resource on the Figma community product? Yeah? Who has published to Figma community? Yes, oh, amazing. I do see people in the audience here that I know who are community contributors, and I'm so excited to see you all here today. If you aren't familiar with our community product, it is our platform for anyone to share design resources, plugins, widgets, and their creations with the world for others to learn what is possible in Figma and how they can actually make that real. I have spent the last decade of my career in product and design, everywhere from startups to scale ups to being here at Figma today. And I can tell you this means something really special to me because when I was doing solo projects or side projects or at my startups as a designer, I didn't have all the resources in the world available to me. And I leaned upon everything that was available in the Figma community to make my ideas possible. So I cannot believe that I'm here and talking to y'all today about something that I care deeply, deeply about. I am ecstatic for this talk to be about two things that I care very deeply about. If you did not hear that the first time I said it, Figma and community. If you didn't hear Dylan earlier today, he opened the keynote with why community is so important to the Figma ecosystem and why it is so important to our creative process. I do want to do a really quick shout out of just all of the communities that I see here in the audience. The first one is internal Figmates, specifically my team. I see a lot of people out here, so thanks to all the internal Figmates who are here. I want to shout out Friends of Figma. I've gotten an opportunity to speak to so many members of Friends of Figma. The community programs that you've created is absolutely amazing. Friends of Figma shout outs. Campus leaders as well. Got to meet a lot of campus leaders yesterday. Yes. Y'all are awesome. I'm so excited to see this next generation of designers be created. But thanks everybody for being here. Today, let's talk about what's happening in our industry, why community is a differentiator, and how we do it right here at Figma. And this is me being very excited about community and Figma. All right, let's start with this shift. Dun, dun, dun. I don't mean for this to sound scary at all, but we are in a shift in our industry right now. For everyone here that has 5, 10, 15 years of experience, we know that building great software used to be really, really hard. And I started my career as a designer before Figma existed, so I do think I can say that at this point. The teams that shipped the best and the fastest ultimately ended up being the teams that won. But with the advancement in the tools that we have at our disposal today, it is easier than ever to build fast and well. That edge is now gone. So, today, what separates the product people love from the ones that they forget? Recently, you've heard Figma talk about speed, direction, and craft, and those things are all true. But I'm here today to champion that something else is the differentiator. If you haven't gotten it by now, that is community. So, what is community? When I first joined the community team, I wanted to ask our Figma community what they thought their design community was. And they told me fantastic stories. They told me stories like Amy just told me before I got on stage, where she ran into someone that she met 10 years ago in New York who convinced them to be a designer, and they're here today at Config. I heard stories about people finding their next job through their Friends of Figma community. I heard people say that community meant that they had a seat at the table with Dylan themselves. There are so many beautiful, unique stories of what community meant. So I panicked when I had to come up with a definition. And I came up with a definition that I thought was simple and grounding for our talk today. And that is that community is your users' relationship with you and their relationship with one another. And most teams never think to design it. But how do you know if you've formed the right community? I wanted to get some examples from Figma because I feel like there's really, really wonderful ways that we see that community is working. One of the ways that you know is that your users care enough to make the product better for themselves or others unprompted. That requires both opening up the ecosystem and then inviting the right people in and allowing them to build things that are really useful for others. I think our plugin ecosystem and all the different files and community are a really, really great example of opening doors and inviting people to come in and build alongside of us. You also know it when thousands of people sign a petition asking to bring back a delightful feature. And that feature becomes not just a mascot for our company, but also for our community. You know it when you see the magic of what's happening right here this week at Config. When you walk in the door and it feels like a music festival, and you're so excited to hear all of the wonderful things that people built and their perspective, and learning about how others are feeling as the world is changing in the way that it is. When tens of thousands of you fly from around the world, I got to meet people from all over the world this week that I've only spoken to on Zoom are right here. That's how you know that you started to form the right community. You might also know it when you see something like this. I don't know. But maybe we can just start with something a little less permanent, maybe a tattoo illustration kit right on community. So, we just talked about the definition of community, which is your user's relationship with you and their relationship with one another, and some signals of what it means when you fostered a good one. But why does designing for that relationship really matter? First thing that I want to talk about is that features get copied, but belonging does not. We've all been there when you get the tweet in your Slack channel where your competitor built your exact feature that you have, or maybe you're the one doing the competitive research to learn a little bit more about what you can take from that competitive tool. But you cannot copy years of making people feel like they are a part of something. A company that I currently think is doing this really well is PostHog. When PostHog first came out, they were focused on user analytics. I think we've all used a good amount of user analytics tools, so you know that space was pretty crowded. But they did take a really alternative angle from the beginning. They built a distinct identity. They have the little hedgehog, if you're familiar, the retro ads all around San Francisco that actually make me smile, unlike some of the billboards we see now. And the CEO openly wrote about how to the community about how they were working. I actually took some of their articles early on and applied them directly to the way that I was working because they were so open about their workflows and what was working and what wasn't. They really became the anti-corporate, radically transparent, and a little weird tech company that actually talks to you like a human. And I think myself and a lot of other people like me really loved them for it. Building that type of unique identity takes a lot of real time and real effort. But once you do that, something does shift. People stop thinking of themselves as users and they start thinking of themselves as something as a part of something bigger. And that relationship that you've built, that is much harder to give up. The next piece, community is your best product signal. You might have heard your users are your best product signal. And yes, I do agree with that. Like, go talk to your users. But I do want to take it one step further because there's always a gap of what you might be hearing in a user interview or in a survey and what someone's going to go tell their friend or randomly tweet on X. Once again, we've probably all been there at some point. But what they say to each other unprompted in Slack, that's where real signal lives. When I jumped back into the startup world in 2022 after being at a larger company, everyone could not stop talking about linear. The exact people that typically hate task tracking, the engineering team, sorry if you're an engineer, were the ones that were championing linear for their organization. And I was fascinated. I was like, what's going on? This is incredible. So linear, if you were a startup that actually wasn't using linear, you had an eyebrow raised in your direction at that time. It kind of became a signal of the type of team that you were. Are you the type of team that likes simplicity, that likes speed, that really honors the engineering team and what they're doing? And linear became that place. And nobody ultimately asked Linear to bring all these engineers in and evangelize their product. And Linear didn't ask people to actually submit bug requests, which I did, or go and submit feature requests, which I also did. And the rest of my team did because we were so excited about improving that product together, both the way that we were working on our team and then both by giving that back to Linear. So that's the signal that you start to get if you foster the right community. And then finally, the people who care are your best growth channels. When your users love what you've built, they do a lot of the work of spreading the word for you. They'll maybe write about it, recommend it, host events for it, build entire YouTube channels about it. Not because you've incentivized them, but because they think that what you're doing is really awesome. It helps them, helps their lives, and they want to share it with others. Example I really like here is Notion. Notion is now grown to over 100 million users, and most of that initial growth came from the community itself. They actually ended up hiring someone from the community really early on. Someone who had actually, before joining Notion, had built a fan site that 80,000 people were visiting monthly, and who helped launch their first templates on Product Hunt. Uh, they brought that person into Notion, and then he became the ambassador for the Notion community program. Their ambassador program spread across dozens of countries, hosted their own meetups, ran their own subreddits, and started their own YouTube channels. That organic growth is irreplaceable. The best salespeople, they don't work for you, they're already out there. And now it's just about fostering the right advocates. So build something that people belong to, they'll tell you the truth, and then they will bring others in. That is the power of community. And that is the new moat. So let's get a little bit into the how. I know I talked about some other examples, but I work at Figma. So I do want to talk about how we think about this at Figma. I'm going to use 4 things that we focus on doing, and I'll talk a little bit about different examples for each one. And I'll close out with 3 things that you can start doing this week to ensure that you're prioritizing and building for your communities. The first directive is to build products that foster connection. Connection cannot be a side feature or secondary. It has to live inside the tools people are using every day and solving real problems. It has to be a part of what you think to build and also how you build it. One of the great examples I have here is the high five. This is something that real time you are building connection with your community. So, the first thing that we do is prioritize real time connection here at Figma. We do it directly in the product itself. One of the most obvious examples that I love is widgets. My favorite widget, the camera, that's other people's favorite widget. I feel like that's one of the favorites. Actually came out of a Maker Week project here at Figma, which is a week where everyone gets together, thinks about our users, thinks about joyful things and what we can build for them. And at the end of the week, you might end up with something that you can ship. And that's what happened with our photo booth. There are other things that are part of our real-time collaboration experience, like widgets, which were built because we all know, alignment can be really hard. And then there's smaller stuff that we've layered throughout the product, things like emote streams or chatting in the backslash command, ways that you can feel like you're actually connecting with your community directly in the product. The second piece of this is building for lasting creative expression. Our community platform is where creators share the work they are proud of. This is Salome's profile, who is somewhere in the audience. But we recently launched a brand new profiles experience that gave creators a new way to share expressive content called riffs on their profiles. We really wanted people to be able to start to build their creative identity inside of Figma so that when someone goes to someone's community profile, they can see their work, they can see what they build, they can see what they specialize in, they can see what they're having fun with and feel more connected to them. In addition, when we were talking about building profiles, we wanted to extend that to for creators to share a little bit more of their creative identity, whether it was a little bit more about their work history, links to some of the projects that they've been working on the side, which, by the way, everyone is doing incredible side projects. So it was amazing to see. Their toolbox, a link to their portfolio or photos. We wanted to make sure that people felt like they were actually getting to know someone in the Figma community environment. And one of the most important things that we consider is Fig Pals, which we added to our community profiles up here on the upper left, which was an idea from an engineer on our team from beginning to execution. But we're super, super excited to bring Fig Pals back in some way or another, just to once again, like continue to build the community experience that we want to foster here at Figma. So let's go to the next directive. Bring people together where they're at. This can mean meeting online or showing up in local cities. Online, we run a bunch of virtual events, but the one I want to highlight today is the Config Makeathon, or the Makeathons. We started doing Makeathons about a year ago now, and it's been a really, really wonderful way for us to see what people can do inside of our products, especially something like Make. It's really, really unbelievable what people push the product to do. The reason why these online virtual challenges really work for Figma and for our community is pretty simple. Challenges are fun. People love a goal, a deadline, a chance to share what they built, not to mention that cash prize, which I recently heard the winner of the first Makeathon it was using to up and move from London to Australia. So it's really, really life changing types of moments that we get to create by just fostering community in this way with the Makeathons. Our last Makeathon that we just announced the winner of yesterday brought in over 11,000 participants. So people really just want to show off what they build, and we're continuing to give them a space to do so. In person, we show up in so many different ways, but I want to shout out right now Friends of Figma. There are over 250 groups across 82 different countries run by community members for community members. Last year alone, they hosted over 900 events around the world, bringing together hundreds of thousands of designers across the world. I had to reread that from KB, who leads Friends of Figma, because I was like, hundreds of thousands of designers. That's so wild. But it really is amazing to see all the different lives that get touched by different programs that we help facilitate, like Friends of Figma. And this is the effect. In Mariana's own words, I just wanted to create a space where people feel welcome, especially those starting out. Sao Paulo has a huge design scene, but it's not always accessible. So building something more open and human really mattered to me. Hearing something like that from a community member is more authentic than anything we could say as Figma ourselves, which is why we look at as our job not to necessarily build community for others, but to facilitate what they've already started creating with Friends of Figma. The third directive is to stay flexible and try things that don't scale. The instinct as a company gets bigger, and we've had to fight this a lot as Figma, is to systematize everything. But some of the most meaningful community moments come from being scrappy. Our Campus Leaders program is run by Joanna Chen, and it is a great example, a great example of that in action. Despite the rapid, the Campus Leaders program grew from 66 leaders last year to 187 this year. Despite the rapid growth, Joanna focuses on community remaining authentic and organic. She does things like write handwritten notes to the seniors who are graduating, personally introduces each campus leader to the Friends of Figma member in the chapter of the city that they're moving to or living in, and listens to what they actually need. A really wonderful, heartwarming example of this was she was working with some leaders who were talking about how difficult it was to move all of the workshop supplies around their campus, and she decided to send one group a wagon. And they had really good feedback about getting that wagon. It really helped them. And so now all campus leaders, if they want, get a wagon to bring all the materials and supplies around. So I love hearing stories like that. That just really warms my heart. But sometimes those things don't necessarily scale. You really have to just be open and flexible to trying something if someone has a problem, and just trying to meet people where they're at. The other example we've built is staying really close to our community. People across the company are reading what you all are saying on social media. We're reading different research recaps around the company, and we're reading notes from customer meetings. When something doesn't land, we might hear it. An example of that, which happened last year, is that we moved the community tab inside the product. We moved it to a secondary tab. And let me tell you, we heard that you all were not the happiest about moving that community tab and maybe putting it in a place you could not find it. So we did get an opportunity to listen, and we brought that back. This was the tweet when we did bring it back. But ultimately, that type of responsiveness does not scale, but it's how we stay connected to the people who are actually using the product. The fourth and final directive is to celebrate your community publicly, in small ways and big. Either way, the goal is the same. Make sure the people building alongside you know that you see them. In small ways, we celebrate community work all the time. A retweet of an individual creator, a shout out in a newsletter. We just bought back this feature where we're going to be showcasing creators on the homepage of our community product. And that gives creators work a real moment of visibility. None of these things are super expensive, but to the creator on the receiving end, they mean a lot both to y'all and to us. And then there are big ways. Earlier this year, we ran our Made in Figma campaign, where we took some of the best work created on our platform and turned it into a citywide takeover in San Francisco. Billboards, Market Street, everywhere you looked. But the campaign wasn't about Figma. It was about the people who made the work and their work themselves, with their names and their stories. There's a little bit more of this video. Just take a look. So I want to leave you with 3 things you can start doing next week to build community for your product. First, do what I did when I first joined the community team, and I wanted to learn what community meant to others. Meet 5 community members. Send a DM, jump on a quick call, find them in your support inbox or on social media or in your Slack threads, or talk to your coworker and say, who did you really like talking to? But have a real conversation about what they love and what frustrates them. Secondly, celebrate one of those people you talk to publicly. A retweet, a shout out, a feature in a newsletter, or some interview on a landing page, whatever you can do. Pick one person whose work has stood out and make sure they know that you see them. And finally, brainstorm how your product can foster connection, whether it is real time or whether it is through that lasting experience. It doesn't have to ship, but just having that practice where you're thinking about how to build that connection more regularly means that maybe it will happen one day. So, in closing, the tools will keep changing, AI will keep getting better, but this space, the people in it, the work that you make, the community you're a part of, that is the most important part. And it always has been. Thank you so much.